Hi there, tech people. Hi, I'm your host, Sean Worker, and welcome to the extended podcast of the Adapters TechX with Chinmai Sharma, where we explore the world of travel, tourism, hospitality, restaurants, and, just the world of tourism and services and how they react to the business trends and fads in a pretty complex world out there today. I'm delighted at Chinmai Sharma joining us. This is a pretty interesting conversation that we've started just on our quick hit that is available on um, both YouTube and other channels, Spotify and Apple and Google, and all powered by our friends at Hunter Gatherer and No Vacancy Live with Glenn Hausman, number one influencer podcast in the travel and hospitality space in the United States, where we all cover the hot topics in tech in the Americas, Europe, and the Middle East. So Chinmai, as you might have heard on the quick hit, is president of RateGain. He is a well-known thought leader in distribution and tech in the travel and hospitality space, with having spent time with Louvre Hotels, Taj, and Wyndham, largely in the distribution and thought leadership of tech that is in the travel industry. He knows both sides of the coin. He's service as software as a service, as well as the operations of how hotel brands operate on a day-to-day basis, both on the franchise side and the operating side. So a wealth of knowledge. He also was part of the team that brought RateGain onto the public markets recently in India, and the company is scaling considerably. He's been on multiple boards with HSMAI, Hedna, and numerous others as he influences and brings his talent to others and shares those ideas. RateGain is a firm that is scaling across about 2,500 customers and about 100 countries, with a variety of products, and really specializing in pricing intelligence, connectivity, and guest engagement or user experience, depending on what side of the fence you sit on. Their world is connecting stuff we all use, but you don't see. It's there in the background, and it's software as a service that is an enabler to make it all work. So continue the conversation where I think where we left off, we were kind of questioning the gaps between the available technology from startups and other businesses like yours to connecting with sometimes legacy and aging networks that can't handle the product that you can offer in the capacity and efficiency that you offer. You think that's a long-term trend, or is somebody going to fix this?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, we are happy that the problem exists because that leads to us staying in business. I think some part of it would always stay. Like we were discussing, I think it's hard for any supply partner. It could be hotels or airlines or car
Mm.
rentals to be able to distribute their rates and inventory and content at scale in the global distribution world. And then historically, we know that there are a few channels that are dominant in terms of online travel agencies and GDSs, etc. But it's a huge world, and every sub-market has its own, inbound and outbound activity. So the eventual distribution strategy for any supplier depends on optimal, uh, connectivity and visibility in various parts of the world. So I think it'll be a good, healthy balance between what we used to call direct connects versus third-party connectivity being powered through companies like ours.
Mm-hmm.
One interesting trend that's happening is, and you might have noticed in the hotel chains also, is that there is some movement towards large commercial platforms and moving away from homegrown CRSs that have been there for many, many years. So that's also an interesting trend. I think it basically falls back to the same discussion that we were having, that hey, bring in some specialists who might be able to do this at scale. If you can avoid a huge team and a capex to continuously operate this and maybe focus that energy somewhere else, maybe it becomes a more efficient model. So it's an interesting time.
And so, when you think, it'd be interesting to learn the decision makers that you work with. What level are they? Are they influencers or decision makers?
Yeah, it's a mix of both. So I mean, essentially, our solutions are meant for the commercial optimization team. So we will work with the end practitioner who's actually responsible for revenue maximization, which makes it easy. And I think that differentiates RateGain also a little bit compared to some of the other companies, because our company is a good mixture of practitioners and people who are not as deep in tech. For example, myself, but also who are people who are very deep in tech and product, and engineering, etc. So I think it's a good balance. So the folks that we interact with are either the end practitioners who have P&L responsibility, but at the same time also the tech folks, and the CFOs, because they are responsible for building and maintaining the infrastructure.
Are you dealing with the VP of Revenue Management, or are you dealing with the CTOs, or what's the pathway in?
Yeah, yeah. So we operate in different verticals. So in the pricing intelligence vertical, for example, usually it's the head of commercial optimization or revenue management. But I'll give you an example that pricing intelligence is also becoming pretty complicated, and the world is full of various promotions and metrics at point of sale level. So the actual scale and volume of data that we need to provide for our partners to make good decisions has an angle of infrastructure and how do you consume that data, and things like that. So the conversation might start with head of revenue management or commercial optimization, but it invariably will involve somebody from tech, etc., because you need to figure out how do you provide that data in a meaningful way, and then there is some plumbing involved. But yeah, typically it might start from revenue optimization. On the distribution and connectivity side, it's a little bit more technical, and we interact more with the tech side. So at the big hotel chains, there will be commercial optimization leaders who will know what to do, but then how to get that done, we'll probably directly interact with their distribution and their tech team. So it's a mix. And then during the pandemic, one interesting change that has happened is that some of the finance executives have taken a lead in some of these discussions, which I find pretty interesting. And we've done some consulting for some hotel ownership groups and management companies also, and everybody's of the opinion that hey, we can't run the same ship the way we used to. So it has to be more cost efficient. We need to find better tools and solutions. So a lot of that is just being driven through cost efficiencies, where the finance execs step in.
So when you connect with companies generally, are you going in with an API? Are you going in with an embedding, you know, some different type of access point? How does that work?
Yeah, yeah. So we do a mixture of pretty much everything. So within our pricing intelligence vertical, we have very slick UIs which are meant for the end
Mhm.
user, just so that they can make use and sense of what's going out there in a very easy user interface. But as you go into the enterprise space, a lot of the customers and partners, they want data feeds, because they have their own UI tools and solutions, and they don't want their team to toggle 25 screens. So we've got a mixture of both. A slick UI, which is meant mostly for end users and maybe smaller hotels and smaller chains. But as you go up the enterprise chain scale, it becomes more automated into data feeds. And same thing with connectivity. I think it's just fed in whichever way they want to basically utilize it. We do have BI tools on our connectivity business also, which gives you real time analysis on volume of shops and error ratios and production by channel, etc. So it's a mixed bag.
And are you seeing more of your customer base being more intelligent about how they connect with you, or is it better, worse than the pandemic, pre-pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic definitely has seen a major shift in pretty much all approaches to connectivity and tech. So we have clients in both sides of uh, the spectrum. Some of them want to consolidate, and they don't want to go after long tail connectivity, whereas some of the other ones feel that just connecting with the usual suspects might not be a good strategy. You need to throw that net a little bit wider. because there are specialized demand partners in various parts of the world. So depending on which product and vertical we are interacting with, the strategy changes a little bit. But one thing is for sure, that everybody is open to new ideas. And at the end of the day, for a supplier, it's all about market share and how do you maximize revenue within the space that you compete in. And if you continue to do the same thing that you were doing pre-pandemic, there's a good chance you will not be successful.
And so, is there a mind shift change when they engage with Rate Gain to view you as a tech education partner or just a supplier?
Yeah, no, I think pretty much all tech companies and solution providers like RateGain, I think, have become more prominent. So I think the value and the importance that is attached to providers like us has definitely gone up. So and it's also because of the complex ecosystem. So in the distribution world, for example, all the travelers are shopping a lot more compared to before. So just to, as an example, just to manage that shopping volume, I mean, we provide a significant level of service where, we become the buffer between the end shopping channel and the hotel CRS, because without that, the hotel CRS might not be able to handle all that volume. So I think the understanding of the value that players like us provide is definitely improved through the pandemic.
One of my favorite topics is AI, and that's about a wide of a berth that you can give any ship, including one that gets stuck in the canals. So
True.
you know when you think of AI and you think of your customers thinking about what AI is, what's their understanding of AI at this stage and on your customer side? And the second question is, how do you utilize AI to provide insight into um, all your customers' transactions?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think, as you know, ML and AI are kind of almost used synonymously and
Yeah,
almost overused. I think from a customer standpoint, eventually what matters is what value are we able to provide, uh, through the clutter and the data that we collect, and that, I think, is the end value. I think you can use various algorithms or ML or AI, if you're not adding value to the end customer in terms of maximizing their revenue potential, then it's all for nothing. So one thing, like we were discussing in the quick chat, RateGain grew both organically and inorganically, and then about a year, 15 months ago, through the pandemic, we realized that we were actually sitting on a lot of data, and that data was just sitting in silos. So we made a concerted effort to just put that into a data lake and start using that data more effectively, because we realized that in our distribution and connectivity business, we were sitting on tons of intelligence. Our pricing intelligence verticals were giving us forward-looking pricing and availability for various verticals, airlines, car rentals, etc. Our social media business was giving us insights into profiles of like millions of travelers. So once you start bringing those things together, you can't really make sense of that data without some machine learning and AI. And I think everybody says that they utilize it. I would be honest to say that we are also in the early stages. I think we've been doing it for about 12 months now. But having data scientists on your team definitely helps. And I mean, using some of these new solutions is the only way that you can make sense of the amount of data
right.
that is out there. So we've introduced a few new solutions, like Demand.ai and Content.ai, which basically utilize all our infrastructure and our expertise and give very bite-sized, information.
I mean,
And
is it how you change your dashboards? Do you
yeah,
get
yeah, exactly.
feedback from your customers? Say, look, I'd like it shaped this or that way, or do you bring that to them and say, here's a way to think about this differently?
Yeah, no, anytime I think we build a product, we do have advisory customers who pitch in to say, hey, this is what I want to see, this is how you should solve it. Um, so we have definitely put more focus on the UI and the overall experience, because the only way to condense so much of data into something usable and actionable is to, build that into a UI. So as an example, we have a product called Demand AI, which is forward-looking demand insights. So if you have 10 hotels in Manhattan, it's really easy for you to see what's happening for the next 30, 60, 90 days, which dates are moving faster than the other ones. and there's a lot of back end secret sauce algorithms that go behind it. But the end result is that the end user is able to actually maximize and take actionable. Uh,
And like, do you have a couple of examples that you could share that this happened at this company, and as a result of these actions, this is what then happened at this company?
Yeah, yeah. So let's stay with our demand .ai product.
Hmm.
So like I was saying, I mean, on a forward-looking basis, we have a lot of intelligence on how the chains are, managing their rates in inventory, and what is availability going down for basic room types, or is alternate lodging supply increasing over certain demands. So we layer that forward-looking intelligence with our pricing intelligence, which is, what is the daily rates for various entities and properties. We add airline load factors, we add COVID, restrictions in a market, weather as well as events, etc., and that translates into a forward-looking, pretty much day by day demand insight for a market. And the beauty of this is that historically the hotels have always suffered this, that it's always too late before they realize that, oh, the city is going to sell out and I'm already at 95% occupancy, I should have changed my pricing. uh, so the advantage with these kind of solutions is that you get to know before the obvious metrics kick in, meaning that you still might be sitting at 40-45% occupancy, but it can give you a really good prediction that these will be the high demand dates, down to the neighborhoods, based on all the big data learnings that we have.
You really are using AI and machine learning in a way that's trying to adapt to so many different platforms that it's a full-time job, I am sure. So what's your just general view of it, maybe your tips on it, or the state of the AI machine learning union, so to speak?
Yeah, no, I think it's a fascinating concept and solution, and I'm definitely not the expert, but I can give you some examples of how we are approaching it. I mean, like we were discussing, RateGain sat on a lot of data and intelligence, which was pretty much sitting in silos, and I think different companies might be seeing something similar. So,
Mhm.
I mean, the only way to make use of huge amount of data points and finding correlation within them is to use some form of machine learning and AI. And thankfully we had a team of data scientists who put their thoughts together. So I think the ability to provide actionable insights from a clutter of data, I think that's probably the biggest use case. And what we've seen is that we were discussing our product called Demand Insights, which is forward-looking, demand, uh, uh, actionable data for our end users. And some of the use cases were pretty fascinating, that you were able to actually predict that this particular market or some market will actually experience high demand before the obvious signs of all the other metrics like occupancy and rates, etc., going up. So so I think any provider which is in this particular space, which has access to a lot of data, will be able to add significant commercial value if they're able to act fast. And I think during the pandemic, what's also happening is that and during the pandemic, what's also happening is that the consumer behavior is changing. So, like we were discussing, the end traveler might be shopping on multiple channels before they're booking. So, as more data points get introduced into the ecosystem, I mean, the only way to make sense of all that data is to use some sort of artificial intelligence. So, I think it's there to stay. The other thing that we were discussing was that analysis paralysis is very easy. You basically have to figure out how are you actually adding value to the enterprise. And you might have to throw a few things on the wall, see what sticks, and then eventually you'll find that formula within that noise, which starts to add value.
It's at the end of the day, it's got to go from insights to action, and so you can monetize the relation, but on the monetize the relationship. But the flip side of it is nice dependency in some respects. Good SaaS model. I mean, if you're offering insight into, you know, terabytes upon terabytes of data, how to get that out the door in a meaningful way is, especially when you're dealing with some legacy systems that don't do that. What a great advantage that is in the marketplace. How transferable is that to the operational level? What do they do on the other side? You're handing them really great insights, but then what do they do with it?
Yeah, so I mean, in the use cases that we're developing, I think, like we mentioned, I mean, actionable insights is the key. So in the distribution business, for example, we can give like really pinpointed information on this particular channel from Indonesia or from India or from China or Southeast Asia is bringing X amount of incremental travelers to your neighborhood. You're not even participating, and you might want to do this. And by the way, this is their average booking window. These are the type of hotels that they stay in. This is the amount of money that they spend. So, in order to do that at scale across different parts of the world, I mean, you need intelligence like this. And even the demand insight or the demand AI product that we were discussing, it just makes you uh, more aware of forward-looking trends even before the obvious metrics have kicked in. So the ability to basically understand that Upper East Side of Manhattan is going to be completely sold out fourth week of May. Even 6 weeks before it's actually happened, and there are no other obvious signs. I mean, that's huge amount of intelligence for anybody to be able to
Exactly.
yield manage.
Yeah, and just figure it out, get the right pricing in the right place with your recommendation tool. So
Yeah.
completely shifting gear. Jim, we've been involved in just a lot of chat over the last, I don't know, between the two shows, 40 minutes plus, and a lot of great content. But I've been meaning to ask you, what is there an event or a book or something that just really impacted how you think as a person, as a manager, as a leader? What, anything out there you can share?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I had a landmark event a few months ago. I turned 50. Um, so I think I don't know if it was just how the family celebrated it or they saw me going down the hill, but it kind of led me to think about things a little bit differently. And it was just a coincidence that I was reading a book called How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger. So it's a pretty well-known book. I think it's been in publication for quite some time. And I had an Audible subscription, so I just started listening to this gentleman, and it's really fascinating how the whole medical practice and the health industry is built around treating the symptoms or not the cause. And he breaks it down in a really interesting way of what you eat is going to determine how you live. So just a little bit of discipline in terms of physical activity, and then how can you treat some really acute problems by just eating right and what to eat and plant-based diets, and how can you use soy and some of the traditional Indian herbs and spices like turmeric, which can fight cancer and things like that. So right from treating type 2 diabetes, etc. And he's full of data and some case studies of how people have kind of reversed things which traditionally the allopathic world will just treat you through medicine. I just found that fascinating, and I think there is you can take that learning into business as well, that you every day you wake up, you're trying to solve a problem, and then the idea is that you should go upstream as much as you can to figure out what's causing the issue versus treating the symptom. So I don't read a lot, so I get excited whenever I read or hear something. But this book was, I just found it fascinating. So I'm nearly done with the book, but that's what I've been reading or listening to these days.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the book. I mean, this whole idea of symptoms and causes, and of course, we can get back to the business part of in a moment. But the idea of you are what you eat, and you
Right.
are what you run. Or whether it's your business or yourself, there are parallels. And so inevitably, the question out of that great sidebar is, so did you do anything after reading the book?
Yeah, so I have started to eat healthy, and yeah, I've also started to. It's almost like a internal challenge. So I've been doing my blood work like every 6 months to see what impact does it have. So it's been a year now, and I've lost weight. I feel better. All the metrics are moving in the right direction, and I mean I haven't done anything remarkably different except just eat a little bit, be conscious of what you're eating and when you're eating, and then just some physical activity, etc. So yeah, it's, at least for me, it has had a remarkable impact.
And so, has that translated across the house, or are you cooking on your own at like 8 o'clock at night and going, no, I've got my seaweed here. And yeah, you guys go back to the takeaway. I mean,
Yeah, it's been hard during the pandemic, and you're right. It's just easy. The takeaways have become so easy, and especially in the Americas, as you know, and you lived and worked here as well. But yeah, I definitely find myself, shopping different, cooking different, eating different. So yeah, it's so let's see how long it lasts. But so far,
you're not doing
I
too bad, especially with doing the check-ins, right? That's really important. I do that too, and it's these lines. I've probably been doing it for maybe a good 10 plus years now, and it makes a huge difference knowing where your baseline is. I mean, uh, I know people are going to probably say, "Oh my God, look at these two! They're off thinking about this, and it applies to business." Or yeah, we are tying it back. I mean, if you don't have baselines,
right.
how do you know if you're making progress? Is it symptoms and causes?
Yeah.
And yeah, you're absolutely. So with this. So how's the 50 thing? Because I'm in that thing too. So yeah, how's it do for you?
Yeah, I mean, it just gives you, a moment to just think about, how much of working years do you have left, and then, what do you want to do later. So yeah, I think a lot of just internal thought processes, and like I said, I think it also changes the way you think about business. So I'll give you a really good example that just happened last week. So we've connected a major tier one OTA with a major chain, thousands of hotels, and the connection is going really
Can
well.
you
But
mention that? I mean, I don't work there.
no, no, we can't.
No.
It'll
Oh,
be
oh,
official soon. But yeah, but
okay.
it's very high volume. Thousands of reservations a day, etc. And the product and engineering teams have done a phenomenal job of taking it off the ground, etc. And then once in a while, one component somewhere basically just fails because of unknown reasons. And I think traditionally, and I'm not technical enough, as you know, but the head of engineering might think about it to say, let's do these five things and hopefully it'll get fixed. And that's similar to treating somebody with antibiotics. Just give them a broad spectrum and something will fix it. And the discussion that I was having with Bhanu, who's our founder chairman, was that we need to be more specific on what really is causing that, because otherwise this thing will blow up somewhere else if you just apply a broad spectrum. So I think there are lessons to be learned and applied pretty much everywhere. So I think it's good that we were able to go upstream and get more surgical and actually identify the issue that was causing it, so that it doesn't repeat itself, somewhere else.
I think there's a key lesson here, and I think any of us who run an organization understand that, sometimes you really are dealing with the scratch and putting a band-aid on it versus, we got to get the band-aid on, so let's head for triage.
Right.
Then we've got to root cause this thing, and I think the great organizations make it easy and culturally comfortable to root cause. Because no, you start root causing, you start finding out more than you thought you were going to find out,
Right.
maybe about things you didn't even know that weren't even associated with the issue, the symptom. And you can apply that analogy to the health checks. Going, I thought I was doing fine. My cholesterol is good. Yeah, but your liver enzymes are up.
Right.
And so, how much booze do you drink?
um,
So,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And the same
That's
thing
true.
I'd imagine with is you're running your business and growing your business. Um, that example is a great example of the creating a culture that it's okay to source the failure without pointing fingers. Let the evidence present itself, and then let's grow stronger.
Yeah, yeah, and we found ourselves relying more and more on data analytics and developing like an alert mechanism so that um, we at least come to know before things blow up. So at least my direction to the team is that we are in the business of plumbing, to just keep it very simple,
Yep.
and our clients work with us because we do that in a very reliable way and at scale. And the worst thing is for our clients to tell us that, hey, something's wrong with the plumbing. We should set up a system where there are enough alert mechanisms to say that, hey, something is about to blow up, and let's fix it. and and you solve it with the combination of eyes on glass and just developing a very robust alert mechanism, right from shopping volume to transactions to, and sometimes you find out that somebody at the hotel side or the chain level, the revenue management, they just did something silly, and inadvertently they just switched off 3,000 hotels. But it's our job, and it's in our financial interest to make sure that all the connections work.
And I imagine that's, there's all the benefits of that, right? Trust in the markets. You've
Hmm.
gone public,
Yeah,
that you approach problems in a proactive way, and that there's an openness in the culture that
yeah,
has surely got to translate into more powerful case studies for clients to choose you over your competitors,
yeah.
with that level of confidence that you're proactive versus reactive. Have you seen that come out in how you're growing your business, where customers appreciate that, or they understand it, or they feel a level of comfort? I mean, does that come out in any way?
Yeah, we are pretty very aware of our NPS level and all the feedback from the clients. We are fortunate that we work with the top brands across all our little verticals within travel, be it airlines or hotel chains, etc. So one of the outcomes of having large enterprise clients is that there's very little margin for error. Uh,
Mm.
and once you do it consistently, then things start to fall in place. And to your point, I mean, there's a lot of a trust, etc., that starts to build. So in our NPS scores and the feedback from clients, we hear things like rate gain or disco is like the diesel engine that just never breaks, continues to work, and those are the kind of things that we like to hear.
Yeah. So for those that are listening, an NPS is a net promoter score, and it's a highly valued indicator of how your customers, how customers view the business. But equally, you can apply an NPS score to how your employees think about that too. So it's nice to have a balanced scorecard with that. So, the 50 thing influenced you. You're doing all this cool stuff in Dallas, and you're, expanding around the world. So as we begin to get into the wrap here, you've learned a lot. Clearly, you've seen a lot of organizations. What are your, tips and takes for CTOs and CIOs to stay relevant over the next, let's say, 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, I think like we were discussing earlier in the show, I think the environment has changed drastically in the last few years. And I think hospitality and travel has always been a late adopter for tech. I see that definitely changing, which is great. I think the advice to the CTOs and CIOs um, would be to just stay as close to the business as possible, both to what is driving the business as well as what is driving the customers. And historically, I think we've seen some pitfalls, and this can happen in any discipline. It could be in finance or tech or HR. That you get too self-involved in running the business the way you want to, that you kind of lose sight about what's happening in the environment.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and like our friend Mr. Darwin said, that it's about speed and changing as fast as you can. It's about nothing else. So I think just being as close to the customer, being as close to the commercial business on what are the engines that are driving the machinery, I think that really makes a difference. And I've seen that both in finance and tech, the ones who are really successful are the ones who really understand that well, and they almost push the other teams. Because it's like very unusual for a CFO to say that, hey, you might want to spend more money here because look at this trend and this is where we're headed. And similarly, the heads of engineering and technology, if they understand their business really well, they would actually be able to support the business leaders in the right way to say that we've done a SWOT analysis against who we compete. Given the consumer trends and where the market is headed, this is where we should double down. And if that is aligned, with the CEOs and with the executive team, then it's Shangri-La. The other thing is just data analytics and data science. I think these have become so important that any CTO and CIO needs to be very fluent in how to interpret data, and how to make sure that you're able to go down to the lowest common denominator on metrics that work on your business. So either understand that yourself or have some really smart people who who can actually give you those trend lines and are able to actually interpret a lot of data ahead of time. And I think the market is evolving unlike never before. So unless you move fast, and um, I think these terms are used too frequently, like fail fast and pivot. But I think that they've become more meaningful, I think, in the last couple of years.
It's these categories to stay relevant. I mean, you could literally apply that to any executive in the office at this point, right? That
Yeah,
if you want to, one, you got to be a lifelong learner, as you're suggesting, and two, the intervals of change and the intervals of requirement for lifelong learning are also narrowing,
yeah, yeah.
right?
No, absolutely. That's true. And I think one of the biggest challenges that, and I think you've covered it in some of your other shows. I think it was discussed with your discussion with Pete Gibson as well, just about talent. I mean, how do you retain and attract talent in today's world? Um, and it's impacting pretty much, throughout travel. So right from hourly employees who are manning the front desk to, product executives or software developers, development engineers. It's really hard. And I think gone are the days where you expect folks to work for 10, 20, 30 years in the same company. I mean, you have to create such an environment that not only are the associates taken care of, but you're also challenging them. Because the Gen X and Gen Ys of the world, they're wired very differently. So it's not about um, just only compensation or a guaranteed job, etc. Everybody wants to be challenged, and when they go home and sleep at night, they need to feel accomplished as to so it needs to be a very challenging and a rewarding environment, because otherwise uh, the team will have high attrition, and that impacts the business.
It's interesting when for us as we do these interviews with tech thought leaders, is that our encouragement is for our categories, travel, tourism, hospitality, retail, to start looking over the fence. And I'm reminded, and this will probably date the show here for those of you that are listening, but CNN Plus closed after a month. And what's interesting about that backstory, to your point about lifelong learning, but also the shorter cycles of change, is that they couldn't get the demographics down right to grab and scale, and they recognized that and said, "That's it, we're out." A month, 1 month, and then started asking myself the question, well, what's the other parallels? Well, content is as important on what is the content, what is the quality of the asset that you're promoting on rate gain, not that you're promoting it, you're enabling it, but those that are at the storefront level, the same old stuff isn't going to be acceptable. And so, I was looking at what Gen Z and Alpha are looking at and what they think is content. Even TikTok is on the way out. you know, of course they'll be around, but they're already moving on to Stitch and other stuff that is completely different content. It's completely way of different getting news or about buying products. So this rapid movement of eyeball count and eyeball um, SEO search, etc., is wide open, and it's just beginning. And then we got onto the metaverse, and I'm a big fan of what's going to happen there. But that's for another show, and I'd love to talk to you about that. But you're dead right. I mean, just some of the things that you commented on is, what is fail fast, and is it just that you're enabling us to make mistakes, and that you bring it out and we work again? Go back to your point about symptoms and causes, which I thought was really impactful. But again, this is a whole thing yet to be rewritten about skills, what's relevant, how do you keep talent, how do you think about biz analysis, how do you think about product development, um, and then maybe if I could just finish with one question, is it's actually a combo, but in order for rate gain to be successful, you need great salespeople. And so, what's the profile of a salesperson of today in your space? Let's say comparison to a year ago or 2 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. I think the requirement of sales is becoming more and more technical. So at least in our line, we need the basics of any salesperson, which is great communication and being aggressive in the marketplace, and to be able to show what value do we provide. But increasingly we've seen that we need to use a cricket term all-rounders who are not only strong technically but uh, apart from the basics of sales profile, they need to be not only technically sound but also have the ability to actually work internally within the teams between product, tech, um, and operations. Because every solution that we're trying to sell is becoming more and more customized. Um, and so not only do you need the ability to be able to talk to the end practitioner, which is, it could be a revenue management professional or a distribution or a IT head, but then how do you take that problem, go back internally, customize that approach and pitch, and then basically sell. So I think compared to a few years ago where you had standard decks for every product, and then they were just doing, wash, rinse, repeat of the same cycle. I think what has changed is that every problem has become a little bit unique. And I've seen the salespeople who have succeeded are the ones who are, almost they're half product people. I mean, they're very articulate on what exactly we can solve, and they're able to think on their feet because every enterprise client that you go to, the problem will be somewhat unique. And then you're able to, go back to the wheelhouse, pick up components that you really want, work with product and support to say that, hey, this is how we're going to pitch it, and then take it back to the client. And that consultative approach in solving the problems, I think that's really key. So I've seen that the ones who are really doing really well and hitting the ball out of the park are the ones who are approaching it in this way.
I remember many years ago, and you remember probably some of this when I was at, a couple of those companies we know. And when I ran a large sales organization, we never really sold anything. We matched needs and we
Right.
solved problems. And, if you're that not pitching, but asking, and trying to find out what the right problem is that they really have, going back to your comment about symptoms and causes. And if you are able to dig down a little bit to your point, boy, does that make it easy when you bring it back to the office and go, okay, this is the problem we're trying to solve and I need help, and let's go pitch it once we
Yeah.
have some options. So that's a great observation. So what's next for Reiki?
So rate gain, touchwood, I think we've been in the business for more than 15 years. The last few years have been pretty exciting. As you know, we are growing really fast. So coming out of a successful IPO, I think there's a fair amount of investment that will happen in product and tech and some of the new products. We are convinced that we want to stay within travel. I mean, we can easily replicate some of the work that we do in different categories in FMCGs or other areas, but we are going to stick to travel. So between build versus buy, we will continue to add a few product lines which will add more value to what we do. Um, we are already launching some new product lines which combine the best of our products between pricing intelligence and distribution and social media, etc. So I think you can expect rate gain to continue to grow. I mean, internally we call it the rocket ship, and I think the last 3 4 years have been pretty exciting. And we will continue to plug holes within our product offerings and maybe move towards more like an enterprise solution. And I think what we've noticed now is that we finally reached that scale where you have the ability to bundle your products and become a little bit more sticky. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and we're also evaluating that if we should add a basic layer of services on top of the product and tech uh, offerings that we provide, not for the the revenue multiple or the valuation, but just to make ourselves more sticky because we have a lot of technical products, and if you add a basic layer of service which basically points to our clients on how best to use the solutions, we feel that that could add some value. So you'll hear definitely more announcements coming later this year about what we're up to.
Sounds absolutely like there you are. You found a symptom and you're going right back to how can we improve the cause. So really terrific. Thanks, Chinmai, so much for taking the time to share a lot of different angles. That was greatly appreciated. So, again, this is one of those interviews that is wide ranging that probably we could have got going for hours. So hopefully we can convince Chinmai to come back in a few months' time and give us an update on that growth trajectory at Rate Gain. When you were thinking about tips and takes, it's pretty important that we start looking at symptoms and cause as much as what Chinmai was talking about, personal health. It's the health of a company to find out and encourage an environment where finding what the root cause is and then working it back to turning it into something positive, even a new product or a service line or some type of add-on that provides value. But also it's a wonderful case study to go back to customers and say, look, we're doing it internally, let's do it for you. So on top of that, the type of talent and the requirement for talent is those, be they at the CTO level or salesperson level, is having that sense of business use cases and presenting that in a way that says, I've got an idea and I should get funding. It's nearly like an entrepreneur within to, go to the bank, it's normally the CFO or the board, and say, look, I got an idea and this is how we can improve the company. And here's how much it's going to cost. And here's how much the outcome should be when it comes to driving revenue. The business analytics, even if you're not into analytics, you got to be into analytics. You got to know what is driving the business and what levers get pulled. And, when you're looking for, the symptom or the cause, and if you don't know it yourself, reach out and get help and get a business partner that can help you, because I'm sure you can help them. And then this notion of maybe reinterpreting or redefining fail fast to enable us all to have a comfortable environment to disagree, to bring a view, but just don't disagree for disagreeing's sake. Bring something else to the table, bring some ideas. So on that note, really appreciate the effort that and the time that Chinmai has put into this really interesting interview. Big thank also to our friends at Hunter Gatherer and No Vacancy Live that promote and produce, and we all storytell together across various platforms and countries, including the Americas, UK, Europe, and the Middle East. So again, thank you to everybody. It's been a fascinating interview again, and we'll see you next Wednesday. So have a good one and keep on thinking about tech.